Hey y'all, welcome to a new week of dinner ideas. As always, I'm just going to jump right on into it. So, we started our week off with these party meatballs, and I paired it with this cheesy spinach dip and tortilla chips. I've said it many times, but like appetizers and finger foods is one of our absolute favorite things. We don't do it for dinner often though, so when we do, it honestly just makes my day. But both of these recipes are extremely simple, and I'm just going to start with the crock pot meatballs. So you just need to grab a bag of frozen meatballs. I happened to be at Kroger and I came across these Swedish style ones. So that's what I grabbed. But honestly, just grab whichever one is your favorite. I personally wouldn't pick up the Italian style ones though. I just don't think those flavors would mingle too well with this sauce, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I've made a few different versions of this, the most popular being with grape jelly and regular barbecue sauce. But I saw a girl on TikTok use strawberry jam and this honey chipotle barbecue sauce, and I already love those two items. I already buy them. But I probably would have never thought to combine them and use it in this recipe. So I'll definitely link her video in my description box since she deserves the credit for this combination. But yeah, as you've seen, I dumped the full bag into the bottom of my crock pot. To a small mixing bowl, I just dumped in the full bottle of barbecue sauce and the full jar of strawberry jam, mixed it together, and poured that all over the top. This sauce almost reminded me of like that sweet and sour sauce that you can find at Chinese restaurants. Of course, it's not like identical or anything, but that is the first thing that popped in my head just because of like the sweetness and that strong strawberry flavor. It almost makes me want to make like some homemade sweet and sour chicken and use this as a dipping sauce in the near future. Hopefully that's the plan. I also think this would be really good, like basted over some chicken on the grill. I think that would be super good. But yeah, I just put the lid on and I cooked mine on high for 3 hours, or you could do it on low like most of the day. I would just keep an eye on it so it's not like burning to the sides. But yep, 3 ingredients and you are done. So moving on to that spinach dip. I have just a normal size bag of frozen chopped spinach. You'll need a block of cream cheese at room temperature, 1 cup of sour cream, which is this full 8-ounce container, 2 cups of shredded cheese. I'm going to be shredding up this block of Colby Jack, some Worcestershire sauce, which is to me the key ingredient in this dish. I think it adds so much flavor and it pairs so well. And then lastly, just some garlic salt and pepper. As you can see, I'm just dumping all those ingredients into a large mixing bowl. But as for this spinach, I was really nervous about this because normally when I make this, if I don't use fresh spinach, I've always bought like the tightly packed little blocks of spinach. And if you've ever bought that, you know that you have to really squeeze out all of the water in it before using it in a recipe. But I've not been able to find those in stores for a while. So this is my first time buying it like this. And I took the chance and decided not to squeeze anything out because it didn't appear to be watery or anything. And luckily, it turned out just fine. Like I did not notice any excess moisture. So that was good to know, and now I can use that in the future. But yeah, I just dumped that out into a small little casserole dish that I had sprayed with some nonstick cooking spray, and I just added the remainder of that cheese all over the top, and I popped that in my oven at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes, and I always like to flip my oven onto broil, and I let that brown on the top for like just a couple of minutes. But here's my plate after everything was done. These meatballs, if you are not familiar with them, I know a lot of people around here are, but maybe you're not from here, but it's really popular served at parties and like baby showers. It's just one of those things that's always there. And this spinach dip is just so good. I have a few different recipes that I like to use, but this is the easiest one and we just always really enjoy it. Up next, we had some pulled pork stuffed loaded baked potatoes. If you know me at all, you know that I am a huge baked potato lover, and Josh got me this cute like charcuterie board set for Christmas, and I've been wanting to use it, and although it's like really simple, I really love the way that this turned out. So first up, I'm going to show y'all how I always prepare my baked potatoes, and they always turn out like restaurant quality. So a scrub brush is a must, at least for me. I ordered that one off of Amazon, and I just make sure to really scrub those skins as I am washing them, since we do actually eat the skins. Like we love the skins, we don't toss them out. So of course we want to make sure all the dirt is off. I also always dry them really good with a paper towel after I wash them. And then as you can see, I'm just taking a knife and I'm stabbing several holes all over the potatoes. I've always heard that if you don't do that, they'll explode as they're cooking, but I've seen a few people skip that step. but I've just not been brave enough to try it. So I'll probably just stick to this way. But yeah, so I'm just drizzling some olive oil over the top and also some kosher salt. We really love that like coarse salt on the skins. It makes it so good. And I'm just going with my hands and I'm rubbing the oil and salt just all over the surface of the skins. I also have my oven preheated at 400 degrees. I don't wrap my potatoes in tin foil just because that steams them. And that's okay every now and then, but we just much prefer like the crispy skins. So the oil really helps with that. And I just place them directly on my oven rack and I cook them for 1 hour, turning them halfway through. And like I said, they turn out perfect every single time. They are so good. And of course, gotta have the sour cream. I really like the squeeze tube kind by Daisy. And now I'm just gonna lay out all of the toppings. So here we just have some bacon bits. I had an open bag in my refrigerator that needed to be used. I'm also going to lay out some shredded cheese. I have some butter and I'm just cutting it into like a half a tablespoon portions is what I would guess that is. And as for this pulled pork, so I cooked this back in January in the crock pot. It's in a What's for Dinner video a few videos back if you're interested in how I do that. But you know, I'm big on not being wasteful and pulled pork freezes really, really well. And there is just so many different things that you can do with the leftovers. So yeah, that's been stored in my freezer. I thawed it out the night before, heated it up, and it is ready to go, and it is just perfect. I also heated up some cheese sauce, which of course goes really well with baked potatoes. This is the Rico's like cheese in a can. We really like the nacho cheese one, but this one wasn't as good. Like, it was okay, but I'm not sure I would buy it again, to be honest. I had every intention of steaming up some broccoli as well to put in the baked potatoes, and I thought that cheese sauce would go so good over it. I bought it, but I completely forgot to serve it with this. I hate when that happens, but what can you do? Anyways, for seasonings, we have garlic, salt, pepper, and some freeze-dried chives, and I'm going to go ahead and assemble my baked potato. Of course, I had to drizzle some A1 steak sauce over my baked potato. It's just an absolute must, but you could totally do barbecue sauce if you wanted to. But these turned out so delicious, and Josh bragged on these for like a week, so that's really saying something. On this night, I made some taco-style smash burgers, and I served it with some taco-seasoned tater tots. I've had this meal planned out in the back of my mind for a while now. It just randomly popped up in my head, and I thought it sounded really good. So it was kind of cool to finally see that come alive, if you will. But I just have a pound of ground beef. This is 90-10. I normally always buy at least 80-20 ground beef, especially when it comes to hamburgers, but Walmart was completely out, so I had to use what was available, but I am not complaining. I did divide that package into 4 equal sections since there is 4 of us. And as you can see, I'm throwing these down on a hot electric griddle. I did melt down some butter first. I normally do not do that when I cook hamburgers, but since this was leaner than what I'm used to, I wanted to be sure that these would not stick. And also I just cut out like a square of parchment paper, and that's what I'm using as I'm pushing these down to make sure that that meat does not stick to my spatula. So yeah, I'm just making sure to really press that down, and I try to hold it for like at least 30 seconds. That way it would really hold its shape and not bounce like back up. But I really love smash burgers because, you know, my kids and myself prefer like a thinner patty. Josh is a huge burger guy, so he doesn't care how thick or thin it is. He's just glad to have it. But I also really like the crust that it gives on each side. It's just so good. But as you can see, I just like generously season both sides with some taco seasoning. It's just the old El Paso one. No rhyme or reason. That's just what I currently have. I've always just bought like the taco packets when I need it. But this was my first time actually buying the bottle. I don't know why it took me so long, because like in the long run it definitely saves you money and it's just convenient to have. But those took no time at all to cook up. I just did a few minutes on each side, and I didn't want to do slices of cheese because when I think of taco, I think of shredded cheese. So that's why I did that. The cheese melted really quickly. I lightly toasted the buns on the griddle, just very lightly. And then I'm using the chipotle sauce by Taco Bell as the base. And then I'm also laying down some shredded lettuce. I really wanted to add some slices of avocado, but my avocado was not ripe in time. So that was kind of sad, but I got over it. But yeah, that was literally it. This was so very simple, but it was just a fun way to switch up normal burgers. Now, of course, I had these tater tots in the oven before I even started the burgers, since these do take the longest to cook. But these clips are just a little out of order, but there is nothing to this. I just took a Kroger brand bag of tater tots and I poured the whole thing onto a sprayed cookie sheet. I did spray the tops as well with some of that olive oil cooking spray, just so that it could crisp up a little bit better and to help the seasoning like stick to it a little better. But I'm just taking that same taco seasoning and I'm just sprinkling that all over the top, and I'm just going to cook that according to the directions on the back of the bag. It cannot get any easier than that. But just that little bit of taco seasoning made such a big difference. We all absolutely love this meal. And I know how big of a challenge it can be to find something that everyone in the household likes, but this is for sure going to be a repeat in the Step household. Up next, I'm going to show y'all how I made this Amish chicken and noodles that we love to serve over mashed potatoes. So you are going to need a whole chicken for this. This one in particular was closer to like 5 pounds, but I'd say anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds is just fine. So I placed that face side down in my Dutch oven. I did, of course, first remove the bag that's inside of the cavity, but I just covered that with some water and I've added in some chopped celery straight from my freezer, and I've seasoned the water with some onion powder, and I'm going to do a 1/4 cup of this chicken bouillon powder, or you could do paste, just whatever you have on hand. I'm also going to do a big handful of some fresh parsley, and then just some salt and pepper to taste. So I am going to go in with my spoon and kind of get that parsley pressed down into the broth, and I'm also just trying to kind of break up the bouillon powder. So I did let that come up to a boil, and then I added a lid and turned the heat down to a simmer, and I let that cook for 3 hours. So as you can see, this is just falling apart. It is so tender. It took me a little bit of time to get all of that meat fished out onto a separate plate, but there it is. You'll definitely want to let it cool down for a bit before you start removing the bones and the skin and getting it all picked apart. But the next step is to strain this broth. And luckily Josh was home when I was cooking this, so he was able to help me since that Dutch oven is so heavy and I was holding the strainer. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take 4 cups of that broth and you're going to add that right back on into the Dutch oven. And what was left, I decided to pour it in my potatoes that I'm going to be using to make mashed potatoes. I love doing that. I love the added flavor. So these are the noodles that I'm going to be using. These are the Amish wide egg noodles. You definitely don't have to use this particular kind. You can just use regular egg noodles if you want it to. But you only need about 12 ounces of them, so you don't need the whole bag. So I just kind of eyeballed it, and I added that into the boiling broth, and then I've added the cooked and shredded chicken right on top. And I'm just going to go in with that same spoon and kind of get that chicken and just make sure all the noodles is pressed down into that liquid. And I'm going to add my lid, and I am going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes. I am going to go in about halfway through, though, to stir it to make sure that nothing sticks to the bottom. But at that point, the pasta should be cooked perfectly, and you'll want to add in 4 tablespoons of butter and 1 can of cream of chicken. I just kept stirring that basically until that butter was completely melted, and just until everything was really well coated and it just was nice and creamy. So you'll definitely want to give it a bit of a taste test before you serve it, just to see if it needs any salt and pepper. Mine did, so I added some in, and that was it. Like I said, we put it over top of mashed potatoes, and it is just the ultimate comfort food. It is absolutely delicious. I know that it's kind of time consuming, like cooking time wise, but it really is very simple to put together, and very few ingredients, which we always love. So I did serve that with some cornbread muffins with a little bit of butter on top and just a side of green beans, and we all really enjoyed this meal. Now on to the last meal in this video. I finally tried out the famous Marry Me chicken, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that I was super impressed with how good this recipe is. So here I have 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts that I've just sliced into 5 thinner pieces, and I'm just seasoning both sides with some simple salt and pepper. Now I just have like a little shallow dish full of some plain all-purpose flour, and I'm just rolling that around and getting both sides just lightly coated in the flour, making sure to really like shake take off the excess. I'm just going to repeat that. As you can see, really light coating, nothing crazy. So now I am going to heat up a couple tablespoons of olive oil in my skillet, as well as 2 tablespoons of butter. So once the bottom of your skillet is fully covered, you can go ahead and add in that chicken. You never want to overcrowd your pan or let anything like overlap. Luckily, I was able to fit all 5 pieces in here. I really hate when I have to cook in batches, but for this chicken, I did cook it about 4 minutes per side. And I say that because, obviously it depends on a couple different things, like how thick your chicken is or how hot your pan is. If you struggle with that, a meat thermometer is such a great tool to help. But while the other side was cooking up, I'm going to go ahead and chop up some of these sun-dried tomatoes. I had never had sun-dried tomatoes before this recipe, and honestly, it's a big reason why I have never tried the Marry Me chicken, as silly as that sounds, because you could definitely leave it out if you wanted to, but I'm so glad I finally tried it because we ended up loving them. I love the flavor that it gave the dish, and now I can, use it in more recipes that call for it. The original recipe did call for a 1/3 cup of them, but since I wasn't sure how they would taste, I did do less than that. But I just say use as little or as much as you want to. Doesn't really matter. So now that my chicken is fully cooked, I'm just getting that removed to a separate plate in which I will cover it with tin foil to try to keep some heat in and keep it nice and juicy. And to that same skillet with all the drippings and oil still in it, I'm going to add a big spoonful of minced garlic. That's going to cook really quick since the pan is still hot. So I quickly added in my chicken stock. I did pour in 1 cup of that and 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. I also shredded up some Parmesan cheese, so I tossed in a 1/2 cup of that. Once it was melted into the sauce, I'm adding in a little bit of some crushed red pepper flakes and a little bit of Italian seasoning. Now I'm just doing some salt and pepper to taste, and that's it seasoning wise. So now I'm just dumping in those chopped sun-dried tomatoes and getting those incorporated. I let this cook down for just a couple of minutes to get everything nice and hot and bubbly. And then I added back in that fully cooked chicken, including like the juices that accumulated on the plate. You never want to let any of that flavor go to waste. But I just let that simmer for a few minutes just to heat that chicken back up and to try to help thicken this sauce up a little bit. But that was it. It came together really quick, and I saw where some people served it over like angel hair pasta and some people served it over rice, and I could not decide, so I just made both. And while both were amazing, we all agreed that we liked it over rice a little bit better. But this recipe was so amazing. I feel like this week was a really good lineup of meals, and this one was our absolute favorite. So if you try anything from this video, definitely try this one. But that is going to wrap up this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.